Yo, what is going on YouTube? This is your boy Dan, aka aDrive, bringing you guys the United Championship League Season 2 Draft Breakdown. How much did you guys miss that intro? Hashtag head smash. The St. Louis Rampardos are back in town, baby, and I'm excited to bring you guys our team breakdown here for Season 2 of the UCL. If you guys missed it, we did the full draft going on yesterday, and yesterday and Friday, the 1st and the 2nd of the month, and we did that on King Nappy's live stream. So if you missed it, well, I got all the picks here for you. I'm gonna break down my team and give guys a little bit of reasoning as to why I picked the Pokemon I did and what I plan on doing with them this season. Now, if you weren't a fan of the Rampardos last season, in the UCL, we actually went 14 wins and 1 loss and finished the season with the best record overall in the UCL. We ended up making it to the championship and unfortunately lost to Pokeaim MD and the Bronx Beartics. But I am back with a vengeance this season, and I wanted to draft something very, very unique, something really, really cool, try out some different mons that I've maybe never used before in the Draft League format, and test my luck and see how it would work this season. So, before I jump into the draft breakdown, I have a question of the day today, and you guys obviously are going to want to watch the entirety of the video before you answer it, but what are your thoughts on the St. Louis Rampardos draft this season? Let me know in the comment section below, and definitely show your love by hitting that like button, guys. It really helps out the channel, and it gets me hyped for the Rampardos season coming up here. Now, jumping into the draft, I had a lot to think about. What my strategy was going to be, what Mega Evolution I was going to grab, kind of what direction I was going to go, and it was a pretty tough start. A lot of Pokemon got picked right off the bat that I had been looking at. I know one of the main things I was looking for was the Latios. I thought Mega Latios or Latios would be phenomenal, but I also had some other ideas up my sleeve, and that's actually probably one of my main game plans is actually what ended up coming to fruition. So you'll see that breakdown right now. So the first pick we had is, of course, Excadrill. Now, if you're not familiar with Excadrill, it's a phenomenal Pokemon, ranked as one of the highest OU Pokemon in competitive battling, and the reason being is it has a move called a Rapid Spin, and Rapid Spin is a way to remove entry hazards from the field, and Excadrill is probably the best Rapid Spinner in the game. You could argue maybe Starmie, but realistically, Excadrill is probably one of the top Rapid Spinners in the game, so I get hazard control right off the bat, and I felt this was a great Pokemon to build my team off of. So with Excadrill, you also get a lot of really cool things. You get Sand Rush, which in the sand, it doubles its speed. Very cool ability. Mold Breaker, another great ability that basically negates your opponent's ability. So things like Rotom Wash, they actually get hit by Earthquake and stuff like that. This also gives me a very good Steel type. Steel type Pokemon are pretty much few and far between. It's very hard to get a good one. There's only like five or six or so really good Steel types, and Excadrill is one of those. Incredibly hard hitter with that base 135 attack stat, and of course it's got great natural bulk. Its stats aren't that impressive from a bulk perspective, but it does have a good HP stat to kind of make up for its lack of defenses. Very commonly run with a Choice Scarf, can be Life Orb with that Sand Rush, can also be seen with an Assault Vest, or most typically with an Air Balloon to avoid those ground type moves. But otherwise, Excadrill is just a very reliable Pokemon, and what I felt was a great starting point for this team here that I wanted to build to hopefully get me back to another championship. That was kind of my plan. That was kind of my goal. So most of the time you're going to see Excadrill take a more offensive role on this team, and that was my plan. But I wanted to make sure I drafted a team that was going to really support Excadrill and let this Pokemon shine, as it is my first round pick, and I really felt like this was definitely worth the first round pick, and I was very glad I was able to grab it, because throughout this draft I didn't exactly have the best positioning in the draft. It was a randomized draft order, and I ended up being like I don't know, like 13th or something in the first round. I don't even remember, but it wasn't anything like marvelous, so I really had to kind of hope for the best, and Excadrill ended up falling in my hands. I was very glad about that. So our next pick, I had a lot of decisions to make. Now that I had Excadrill on my team, I had some tough choices, whether I wanted to go Sand, whether I wanted to grab Hippowdon, or maybe Mega Tyranitar, or maybe regular Tyranitar. I had a lot of Mega options on the table, and I decided to grab my Mega on my second pick. I decided to grab Mega Venusaur. Now, Mega Venusaur is a Mega Evolution that I've wanted for so incredibly long. I almost grabbed in the GBA, but I passed it up for Mega Altaria because I'm a big fan of Altaria. and I wanted to give that a go, but I've learned that defensive and bulky megas are definitely my sweet spot. You guys saw me rock with Mega Sableye multiple times. You've seen me put in the work with Mega Aggron, winning the Defensive Player of the Year last season in the GBA, Mega Sableye winning the MVP a season prior to that, Mega Venusaur here. Last season, I actually got Mega Metagross banned from the UCL because of the performance I put on, getting over 30 kills in just 15 games. I think it only played 14, so averaging over 2 kills a game for Mega Metagross. So I'm looking for Mega Venusaur to put in some work this season. If you're not familiar with this Pokemon, it's got the ability Thick Fat, which is really, really useful because it basically reduces 2 of its weaknesses. It's got 4 weaknesses: Ice, Fire, Flying, and Psychic. Thick Fat reduces 2 of those, so that means with that ability, you only have 2 weaknesses, Flying and Psychic, both of which Excadrill actually resists. Excadrill does resist Psychic types, and it resists Flying types, making these two a pretty unique combination to start off with. Now, Mega Venusaur has incredible bulk on both the physical and the special side, not to mention a plethora of options from the offensive perspective, with physical options like Earthquake and Knockoff, Power Whip, special options like Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb, a lot of different options, Sleep Powder and Leech Seed. And you can kind of keep going. I mean, Mega Venusaur has a lot of different things that it can do, but its best use is in that defensive role, that tanky role, and you're going to see that's kind of a common theme across this team. I wanted to draft a team full of bulk, full of tanky, hard-hitting Pokemon that I felt could really rip through my opponent's team, and I could utilize Pokemon like Excadrill as an offensive monster, kind of paired with things like Mega Venusaur. So I was very glad to grab Mega Venusaur. I'm so excited to use this Pokemon again. I've wanted to use it in a draft league format for years at this point, but it's always been a first-round pick, and I've never been willing to just kind of expend my first round pick on it, but we were able to snag it early in the second round because of my super duper late first round pick that ultimately resulted in me getting a good second round pick. So Mega Venusaur was our choice, and I am very, very glad about that. Now our next pick here, our final OU pick, is very, very tough. We've already gone through 2 full rounds of the draft, and again, I'm towards the very tail end of OU, and there wasn't a whole lot left. Hippowdon had gotten taken, and Hippowdon was definitely one of the Pokemon I was looking at. I was debating on whether I wanted to pair Mega Venusaur with some sort of another bulky Pokemon to kind of work with it, but there wasn't really a lot on the draft board that I liked, so I went with this Pokemon, and I have no regrets whatsoever. We've got Tyranitar. Now, what this does is makes my team an immediate sand threat. Excadrill with Sand Rush in the sand is incredibly difficult to prepare for. I can tell you I faced Old Man Tub last season, and I remember facing Mega Mogwai as well with the sand, and it is very, very challenging to prepare for a Sand Rush Excadrill, because it hits so incredibly hard with Earthquake and Iron Head. It's got great coverage moves on Excadrill, and that double speed stat with a Life Orb just makes it so it shreds through teams. There's very few things in the game that can actually outspeed a Sand Rush Excadrill, and in a draft league format, you can prep that speed stat to be exactly what you need under Sandstorm. Now, I'm really glad that I don't have Mega T-Tar, because that opens up T-Tar in another dimension. Now, not only are you getting that special defense boost in the sand, but I have the opportunity to run Chople Berries to reduce my fighting type weakness. I have the ability to run Smooth Rock, I think is the item, that basically increases the number of turns we have sand. We have so many potential opportunities with Tyranitar here, and it's a Pokemon that I was a little bit hesitant to grab, but I'm actually really glad I did. Now, if you don't know about Tyranitar, it's a huge offensive threat, can be a Dragon Dancing variant, can Pursuit Trap things. It's a Dark type, which is something I feel like my teams always lack. It's a really good Dark type. It does have that glaring 4x weakness to fighting. Excadrill has a similar weakness, but Mega Venusaur does patch that up decently well. Again, this thing is incredibly bulky because of its ability boosting his special defense, basically because he's in the sand, so that's also super duper useful. And again, having that huge hard-hitting Dark type is super nice. It also serves as another Stealth Rocker, so that takes some of the Stealth Rock pressure off of Excadrill. And just, I really felt like my first 3 picks, and I know Twitter was going nuts, the chat on the UCL draft stream was going nuts. People were hyped about this, and I am hyped as well. Now, I will say this, Mega Venusaur in the sand isn't optimal, right? Mega Venusaur and Tyranitar actually work pretty well together. Again, because Mega Venusaur's 2 weaknesses are Flying and Psychic, Tyranitar happens to be immune to one of those and resists the other. So, very, very nice pairing there. And again, you can see these first 3 picks. I was just so happy about how that kind of worked out and how our team was stacking up so far in the early parts of the UCL draft. So, with all that said, here we are heading into the UU tier. And UU is very challenging because this is where I think the team makeup really comes together, and you start to pick some of the Pokemon that really make a difference on your team and really kind of add to the mold and really define what your team is. So in the first round of UU, I think I had a pretty bad pick again, and I really wanted a good fairy type. Sylveon was on the board, but I knew that wasn't going to sit around very long, and unfortunately, because of the draft order spot I had, Florges, Sylveon, and pretty much the main Pokemon that I was really hoping to get were taken. So I was in a bit of a tough spot, but I decided to grab a Pokemon I'm very familiar with. I grabbed Salamence, our Earhart, from our GBA Season 5 Championship. This is a Pokemon that I finally learned how to utilize towards the tail end of last season in the GBA, and it ended up being my MVP in the playoffs and ultimately winning a championship as the St. Louis Rampardos, so I had to bring this guy back. Now, Salamence has a base 100 speed stat, an incredible 135, I believe, base attack, a 110 base special attack, so a huge offensive threat, but it can also be defensive. I love the fact it's got Moxie. I love the Intimidate. I love the Dragon Dancing variants. I love the mix sets with Draco Meteor, Fire Blast, Earthquake. I ran so many different Salamence sets last season in the GBA, and I encourage you guys to go watch them because it was just amazing. We got so creative with this Pokemon. We ran Bulky with Intimidate and Defog and Roost, with Toxic, Roost Stalling. We ran Dragon Dancing, Sweeping, Choice Scarf, Moxie sets. I mean, the options are just limitless, and I wanted a Pokemon that was one, a Fighting Resist, which Salamence gives me, one, a Ground Immunity, which Salamence also gives me being a Flying type, kind of patching up some of the weaknesses I previously had, and a Pokemon that can set up and just destroy a team or break holes in a team with moves like Draco Meteor, with moves like Outrage, things like that. This thing can serve as a phenomenal wall breaker and gives us our fastest Pokemon at this point in the draft with a base 100 speed. I'm very, very big fan of Salamence, and I fully expect it to be a huge part of this team this season because it's probably, in my opinion, one of the top 3 or 4 Pokemon in UU, and I don't really know if that's debatable. Salamence is just really good because it's so versatile, and you're gonna see a theme here. I like versatile Pokemon, and Salamence is exactly that. So here we are, 4 picks into the draft. I have some serious power, but I need a little bit more bulk, and I need some team support because to me, that is incredibly important, especially when you're dealing with a couple Pokemon that do not want to be status. Specifically, Mega Venusaur does not want to get status. It really affects its longevity, so I had to come up with something different, and I had to come up with a Pokemon that can really kind of work with those weaknesses I have and give me some opportunities to sweep with my big offensive threats. So here we are, Vaporeon, a returning Pokemon from our championship team last season in the UCL. Oxygen, of course, cute little Vaporeon, our evolution, a phenomenal Pokemon with the water absorbability, basically allowing this guy to switch on all your Scalds. One of the other things I love about Vaporeon is Baton Pass. I love to Baton Pass. I don't even care if I'm passing over stat boost. I just love Baton Passing for momentum purposes. Now, last season in the UCL, Vaporeon was actually one of my biggest offensive threats as well. I just happen to utilize this thing really well because it's got a great special attack stat, even uninvested. Those Scalds hit really hard. You've got Ice Beam as an opportunity. Again, Wish, Heal Bell, Cleric options. Just being able to support the team, be a great pivot Pokemon, and make sure the other Pokemon can stay healthy. Now again, this absorbs Scalds for Mega Venusaur. It definitely absorbs Scalds for T-Tar and Excadrill, and it can take on those Ice-type moves for Salamence, so Vaporeon felt like a really good fit. Now I was torn because I could have gotten my Milotic in this draft spot, but I went with Vaporeon for a couple reasons that I just mentioned, but I'll kind of reiterate. Milotic is great at status absorbing because of Marvel Scale, but I really wanted the Pokemon that can heal the rest of the team, pass wishes to my big Pokemon, and take on those water-type hits like Scald without a problem, and this thing has water absorb, so it really makes my opponent think twice about making those decisions. Very excited about Vaporeon, and I think it's going to put in a lot of work this season for the St. Louis Rampardos. Now, here we are, our final pick for UU, and I had a lot of tough decisions to make. This was probably the pick that was the hardest for me to decide on because there was a lot of really good Pokemon still available. Not a ton, but there were some, and I had to make a decision between whether I wanted to go with a specially offensive Pokemon, which was kind of standing out in my mind, or whether I wanted to go for a hard hitter or maybe one of the walls, but the walls that were left weren't too great. But I went with a Pokemon that I felt really comfortable with last season and a Pokemon that I know can rip holes through teams. I went with Heracross. Now, I'm going to be honest, I really wanted to draft Mega Heracross in this draft, but I couldn't pass up on Mega Venusaur when I saw it there in the second round. So Heracross will have to suffice, and I love this little bug type, man. I love bug types in general, but I love Heracross. It's got an insane attack stat. It's got great abilities in Guts and Moxie, so this gives me a status absorber to take some of the pressure off of Vaporeon. It also gives me another Moxie sweeper, so I have 2 Moxie Pokemon right now. If you don't know what Moxie is, it gives you an attack boost every time you feint an opponent's Pokemon with this Pokemon, so it serves a great Choice Scarf Pokemon. I've also learned how to use this thing as an effective Swords Dance wall break. Breaker, a status absorbing Wall Breaker. I've used it defensively in the GBA before. This Pokemon was part of my championship team last season in the GBA, and I really am excited to bring it back again because I have some new stuff. Excadrill, Mega Venusaur, T-Tar. I'll be honest, I probably brought those 3 Pokemon to less than 10 games on Showdown in my life. Like, I've really never used them. I've only faced them and I've seen them. I don't battle a whole lot outside of the league, guys. So a lot of these Pokemon that you might see, I might not have really used, but I see what they do on paper. But I really wanted to grab some Pokemon I was comfortable with, and Salamence, Vaporeon, Heracross cover those check boxes right there. I love Heracross. Again, it's just such a great offensive threat. And now my team is just looking scary, man. Like, I've got so many hard hitters. Salamence can rip through teams. Heracross can sweep teams. Tyranitar is a scary monster. Mega Venusaur is incredibly bulky with great offensive pressure, and Excadrill can just obliterate things. So really excited about Heracross, and I was very glad to add it onto our team. So that wraps up our day 1 of drafting. From this point forward, I actually had a team of guys. I had a team of people helping me throughout my draft. So big shout outs to those guys, our front office here for the St. Louis Rampardos, giving me ideas, kind of bouncing ideas off each other for what we wanted to do for this draft. But for the next 6 picks here, I actually had a tough decision because I actually was at a picnic. So I was only half involved in these picks, but everything that ended up getting picked was actually what I wanted anyway. So it's really not too big of a deal. But we were able to get 6 more awesome picks that I'm really happy with. So jumping into RU, I had some tough decisions to make again. There was a couple Pokemon on the board that I really wanted. Uxie was a great Pokemon. Another Stealth Rocker. Take some pressure off of T-Tar and Excadrill. Also give me a ground immunity, which is really important because I do have a couple ground weaknesses. Uxie looked great, but there was one Pokemon I just couldn't pass up on, and I didn't think it was going to fall any further in the draft. I had to grab my homie Cofagrigus, man. Cofagrigus, however you want to call it. I'm going to call it Cofagrigus. That's how I say it. I love this Pokemon. Now, I've used this Pokemon in the RU before. Very cool Pokemon. Incredibly bulky from both sides. Its defense stat is out of this world. It's got Will-O-Wisp, Knockoff, Trick Room, Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, Shadow Ball. It's just mind-blowing. The options are endless, and one of my favorite things about Cofagrigus, Toxic Spikes, baby. I love Toxic Spikes. I love the pressure this thing puts on. I love the fact that it's a complete fighting immunity for my Tyranitar, which is like, yo, don't hit me with fighting attacks, bro. My man Cofagrigus coming in being like, yo, I'm gonna hit you with my 4 hands, and I'm gonna mummy yourself, and you can't even touch me. Its ability is amazing, by the way. Mummy is phenomenal for a number of reasons. Mummy, I was just prepping for Chimpact, actually. You asked Cofagrigus this past week in the GBA, and I can tell you, his Cofagrigus, it messed up my planning entirely because Altaria couldn't touch it because it loses Pixelate, and this Pokemon can't touch it because of this, and it's actually a very interesting Pokemon to prepare for, and it's so incredibly bulky. It doesn't care about your knockoff. It doesn't care about your dark types. Again, the synergy with Tyranitar is just wonderful. You can see I'm really focusing on building synergy across the team, so each Pokemon is really covering each other's weaknesses, right? That was kind of my focus. You got your T-Tar, you got your Cofagrigus, Mega Venusaur kind of fits right in between those. Salamence, just a huge hitter. I got my ice resistances. We're working on it. We're in there. I'm feeling pretty good about Cofagrigus, and I'm just very excited about the possibilities with this ghost type Pokemon. And the one thing I love about it too is it makes it so I have a spin blocking monster. I can set up those T-spikes and you cannot spin them away. My Stealth Rocks are not getting spun away because my man Cofagrigus is sitting right there. So I've finally learned the importance of hazards, and I think this team is going to be very important for me to get those hazards up, to get that little extra damage, break those focus sashes, to allow my Sand Rushers to destroy some souls. So here we are in the second round of RU, and RU is kind of a thin tier. I would say UU is probably the best tier to draft from. OU the second best. I would say RU was the worst of the 3 tiers or 4 tiers for us to draft from, because I just felt so pinched, man. I just don't. It's funny because RU is probably the tier I play the most now, but I just felt so pinched with these options. It just really didn't fit a lot of my team. But I made a pick here, and this was probably the pick that I think people were least excited about, but I have a lot of reasons as to why. So we ended up grabbing Bravere here. First of all, it's the 4th of July weekend when I'm recording this, so I had to go with my America bird, obviously. My man Bravere here. This thing is actually really solid for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a proven fact that Brave Bird spam in the league format is just amazing. Why? Because each team pretty much has one steel type, one rock type, maybe. Most teams have one steel type, some teams have a rock type. Brave Bird just obliterates things. Obviously, there's electric types too, but I'm not too worried about those. But Brave Bird is just, it's an amazing thing. Return and normal stab is also a very good offensive type stab, because again, for the same reasons, Bravere also gets moves like Superpower, it gets Tailwind, and one of the other things I really like about it is it gets Defog as well, and not to mention its abilities. It's got the Defiant ability, which makes it so if it gets hit with an Intimidate, if it gets hit with a Defog, its attack stat goes through the roof. So I feel like we could play some real cool games with this thing this season. Switch it in on some Intimidate, switch it in on some Defogs, get those attack boosts, run this thing as a Choice Scarf user, and destroy some things because its attack stat is insane. It's got great natural bulk with a pretty high HP stat. I think it's like 80 across the board on the defenses. The sub bulk up set is amazing. Sub bulk up Bravere is phenomenal, and you also often need just one attack. This thing is really, really cool. Sub, bulk up, Roost, single attacking. Bravere is really, really neat, and I think that can make a debut this season. I don't foresee Bravere to be a Pokemon I bring every single week, in all honesty, but I think in certain matchups it can be very, very effective against my opponent's team as a pivot Pokemon with U-turn, as a great Scarf option, as a great Bandit option. I could also do a lot of other things offensively with it, and again, it gives me that ground immunity too, another ground immunity to take some pressure off of Salamence there, because I was a little bit worried about that, and it also deals with fighting types as well, obviously having that flying type stab. So it wasn't quite the Crobat I really wanted in UU. I wanted Crobat so badly, guys, but it was I had to take Salamence over Crobat personally. You know, I think Bravere was a great pick. So here we are, the final pick in RU, and I can tell you the Pokemon I got for my final pick in RU actually was going to be my first pick in RU, and I decided to hold off on it. My front office said, I don't think you should get this Pokemon. I don't think it's that good, but I honestly was very excited about this Pokemon, and I think it's a great Pokemon for us to have on the team, and it's Delphox. And I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of Delphox. I don't really like its design. It looks pretty cool here, though. It actually looks kind of cool here, but I've never been the biggest fan of Delphox, but it fits this team in a number of different ways very effectively. One, it gives me that Firewater Grass Core. Mega Venusaur, Vaporeon, Delphox. Done. Loving it. Gives me a Psychic type and a Fire type. Great dual stab, actually, for a number of different reasons. It's got great coverage options on Delphox. I know it learns some Grass type moves, learns Dazzling Gleam, learns a couple different things. It can trick, which is really cool, so I can trick Scarfs and things. It can be set up with Calm Mind, and it's one of the biggest points to Delphox that I want to point out is Fire Stab and Fire attacks in GBA and UCL format is really, really important, and because it, like you see Victini, Entei, those Pokemon, Darmanitan, they're huge wall breakers. I'm not going to say Delphox is, but for being, you know, my 9th pick or whatever, I'd say that we did pretty well here with Delphox. But the most important thing that Delphox does for us is gives us Marshmallows. No, I'm kidding, but it gives us a Pokemon over the base 100 speed tier, which is something we lacked right now. You can see our team is definitely a little bit slow, and I've worked with slow teams in the past, right? I mean, my GBA season so far has not been going as well as I would like, but pretty much every team I've had in the Draft League format has been relatively slow, and I've been able to work with it. So I think I could do that this time, but I did want to get a Pokemon that was over that base 100 speed tier. I think Delphox sits at 104, I believe, which is really, really cool because you can at least outpace those base 100s and kind of help with that. You kind of force your speed tiering in this format is very important because you really want to have enough diversity in your speed tiers so that way your opponent has to work towards that highest one. So instead of running Adamant on a Pokemon, they might be forced to run Jolly. For example, a base 105 Pokemon, or let's say a base 108 Pokemon like a Terrakion, for example. Because I have this Delphox, Terrakion is forced to run Jolly instead of Adamant, simply because if he runs Adamant and I bring max speed Delphox, I destroy his Terrakion, right? So that's just kind of one of the reasons why, you know, those speed tiers are really important. I felt like Delphox was a great addition to the team. Again, I was surprised that it actually fell to the final round of RU, but I was very, very glad I was able to pick this Pokemon up, simply because, again, I mentioned the points, but great coverage, good special attack stat, Fire type, which fits our core, and we got that nice speed stat, which was probably the most important thing. So, the last group of drafting, 3 picks left. We have to pick our NU Pokemon here, NU and PU, and this is where things get a little bit creative, a little bit more funky. People drafting Dedenne and Mr. Mime and whatever else. This is where things get really, really interesting. But these Pokemon actually make a huge difference, and they can have a huge impact on a season. I actually brought Pokemon like Kecleon last season to like championships, Golurk. Like these Pokemon end up being really important. So do not sleep on these last 3 Pokemon because they are incredibly important. And I feel like I got a really good steal on the first one. I got Ditto, man. And Ditto is amazing, dude. Ditto isn't an NU Pokemon. Ditto is an Uber's Pokemon as far as I'm concerned. This thing turns into whatever your opponent has, and you can bring this thing, and just having it on your team stops your opponent from bringing setup sweepers, because if I bring Ditto and you click Dragon Dance and I'm Scarfed and I come in and I take your stat boost, I turn into you, I got my Scarf so I'm faster. I mean, Ditto is just gonna destroy some souls, man. I've been on the wrong end of Ditto from Gym Leader Geo in the GBA. I've seen what this thing can do. I knew what it can do anyway. I've used this thing back in like 4th gen. I know what Ditto can do. This thing is really, really cool. There's not much to say about it, but I felt like it really patches up some of my speed issues, even though it's not a fast Pokemon, but being able to transform into something else is really, really neat. It also helps with scouting, right? You transform into your opponent, you know exactly what their set is. Really, really takes, you know, some of the guessing game out of competitive Pokemon, especially when I'm dealing with some Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses like Salamence and Tyranitar. I can kind of predict those things and kind of get a little bit of intel on my opponent's sets. Not to mention, you'll find that a lot of Pokemon aren't good at facing themselves. For example, like Mega Venusaur versus Mega Venusaur. Well, that doesn't sound too good, right? So there's a lot of Pokemon that just aren't very good at facing themselves, and that's what Ditto does. But it's a very situational Pokemon, but I think it can be very, very effective this season in the UCL. Now, our next pick here, again, I really felt like speed was important, and I've always felt like fast electric types are just a huge, huge port to the format. I've had Jolteon before. You know, I've used these fast electric types in the past, and I felt like I really wanted to grab one, and I wanted to go a little bit out in left field for this one. So I decided to grab the homie Raichu. And while Raichu may look pretty dorky right here in the middle of the screen, it's actually like a pretty legitimate threat. Now, I'm taking my friend Liz's Pro Sneasel suggestion on this one because she swears by the fact that Raichu puts in the finest of work. We're going to find out this season. Base 110 speed is huge. That gives us our fastest Pokemon on the team. And don't sleep on that, man, because that's actually pretty good. Now, don't forget this thing's got a great move pool with things like Surf, things like Thunderbolt, Volt Switch. It can be physically offensive. It learns extreme speed. It's got nice utility moves like Encore, which I really, really like to stop setup sweepers. Can be used with a Life Orb, could be a Focus Sash, could be a lot of different things. I really, really like Raichu, and I really think it could actually put in some work. It's got Lightning Rod, giving it an electric type immunity, so a lot of perks for Raichu. Now, it is a little bit weak, right? 90 special attack isn't exactly the greatest, but nevertheless, it gives us speed, it gives us a Volt Switcher, it gives us some pivot options, and again, here we are in NU, so it's not like you're going to be drafting Groudon in NU, you know what I mean? So you kind of have to understand the Pokemon here are not going to be all that great, but Raichu isn't bad, and I'm really happy about grabbing Raichu here. But here we are, the final pick of the draft, and this decision was not a tough one. I was actually going to grab this Pokemon first in NU. I decided to wait because it didn't really fit the team that well in terms of me checking off the boxes of things I need. But I had to go for it, man. The UCL is not meant to be as competitive as the GBA. It's meant to be a little bit more fun. So I went with my puppy's grandfather, her granddaddy. This is Stoutland, man. You guys know that I have a little puppy. Her name is Lillipup, of course, named after the Pokemon. So I had to grab Stoutland. And you might be like, well, Stoutland, that thing's not very good. Aha, but it is, my friend. It has the Sand Rush ability, despite being a normal type. So not only does this thing fly around in the sand super fast, it's got Intimidate as well as another ability. It's got great coverage options, great natural bulk. This thing learns Play Rough, it learns Superpower, it learns Crunch, it learns Return. It's got so many, it's just amazing, dude. Not to mention that Sand Rush ability. So now we have Excadrill and Stoutland who are going to be running races. They're going to be running laps around my opponent if T-Tar gets that sand up. And this thing is not a joke, man. Miguel brought this thing to a championship with his man Mato that Hippowdon. Pretty sure Fizzy Stardust had Stoutland. I think he called it Colin, and he had T-Tar. I mean, this thing is not a joke, man. For an NU Pokemon, this thing can hang with the best of them. And I feel like because of the sand, Stoutland is no longer an NU Pokemon anymore. Stoutland is an absolute monster. So I'm really, really excited to have Stoutland on the team, and I think it's going to put in a lot of work as my little puppy's grandfather. He's gonna defend the Lillipup name and defend our household and destroy some souls in the sand, and I'm really excited about that. So that is our team here, guys. There's a few things I do want to address before we wrap up this video. Obviously, this team is not perfect. It's really hard to draft a perfect team because there's a few little things I'm missing, right? I don't have my Fairy type. I could use a better defensive core in terms of Fire, Water, Grass, or Fairy, Steel, Dragon. I'm missing the Fairy type. That's one of the biggest things that this draft lacks is a Fairy type. So if I have to deal with Dragon spam, it is a little bit tough for my team, but I understand that. I'm going into this knowing that that's a problem. It got to the point where the only Fairies left, like after I missed out on the OU and the UU Fairies, it was pretty much like I grab Gramble and I don't get Cofagrigus, or, I mean, that was really it. It was Gramble or Aromatisse, and I'm like, I don't want those. And then Mawile is another ground weakness, and it's not very good. And like, it was just, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just gonna say no Fairy. It is what it is. And if it bites me in the tail and I get destroyed by some dragons, that's so be it. You know what I mean? But I trust the bulk in Cofagrigus and Mega Venusaur, Excadrill in the sand, things like that. I think we can make that work. The team's a little bit slow. We've got Raichu. We've got, you know, Delphox over 100. Got Salamence there. So a little bit slow, but I guess if you think about the Sand Rush part of things, Stoutland, Excadrill, and Sand, double their speed. They're going to be faster than anything anyway. The fact that T-Tar can run Dragon Dance, Salamence can run Dragon Dance, T-Tar and Salamence can both be Scarfed. Excadrill is a Scarf user. Heracross is a Scarf user. Bravere is a Scarf user. Ditto is most likely Scarfed. All of a sudden, my team doesn't look all that slow anymore, so I really wasn't too concerned about the speed because so many of my Pokemon are just really standard at running Choice Scarfs or having the Sand Up and really doubling their speed or whatever it may be. We have 2 Tailwind users as well, which I really like. We have a couple different options to kind of mitigate the lower speed issues. Otherwise, I'm really happy about this. I mean, we could use a little bit better of a special wall breaker, but Salamence will fill that role. Mega Venusaur hits hard enough. You know, modest max HP, max special attack Venusaur hits really, really hard, guys. But I think we've got a good team here, man. I really do. I'm really happy about this. I think Tyranitar and Excadrill are just going to prove to be an insane combination. I understand Mega Venusaur synthesis doesn't work too great in the sand, but from a type perspective, these Pokemon really, really cover each other's weaknesses really well, and I'm just incredibly ecstatic to start the season and make this team work and really show off the power of Sand Rush and the power of, you know, nice bulk with things like Aphagrius and things like that. I'm gonna get pretty creative this season. It's gonna be a lot of fun, guys. So anyway, here is the schedule. Let me pop this up on the screen. I want to say before we get too far in the schedule here, as you probably know from my day video, I got my wedding, I've got my honeymoon, I've got a bunch of things going up. So for week 1 and 2, I apologize ahead of time. I am playing the matches, but I'm gonna be very, very busy. So I'm gonna do my best. I've got my front office helping me. Hopefully I can pick up the wins. We've got 2 tough opponents right off the bat. We've got King Nappy and the Tucson Terrakions that we're taking on Joey Pokemon, the previous champion, and the Bronx Beartics. His team is OP as all heck. We've got Kristen and the Tulsa Talonflames, Game Boy Luke and the Bristol City Blazekins. Then we're facing Christian, Manchester Manazones. You guys can read the screen, right? We got Patters, David, Twit, Mo, PK, then we got you know, Miguel, Leo, Nips, and Jay, and then Nexus. So pretty good lineup. Obviously in the UCL we each play every single team, so I knew that was gonna happen. No surprise with the schedule here, but we are gonna be taking on the Tucson Terrakions next week. He's got a really interesting team. I think his team actually stacks up decently well against us. He's got like Thunderous T, Gardevoir, I don't really remember the rest. I think Rotom Heat, some stuff like that. So he's got a pretty good team, so we'll definitely have to be ready for that. But anyway, I just talked for over 30 minutes for you guys about this, you know, this team breakdown. So I hope you guys did enjoy. I wanted to go pretty in depth and kind of explain my reasoning and all that stuff, and I wanted to get it out to you guys as soon as humanly possible. So please, please, please show love on that like button down below. Subscribe if you're new. Now give me your thoughts on the question of the day, of course. What are your thoughts on the Rampardos draft analysis? You can give me out of Rampardos draft 1 out of 10, maybe 10 for being like, yo, this team is about to be a championship team. 1 being like, yo, aDrive, you should probably just retire right now. Obviously, it's not a 1. It's probably closer to 10. But I'll let you guys decide that, of course. I'm really excited for this season, guys. It should be a ton of fun. I'm really excited about the UCL. It was a blast last season. And I'm coming back for that title, man. We just missed out last season, losing in the championship. We're coming for it, though. It's mine. I'm doing it. St. Louis Rampardos. Your man, aDrive. That's going to be it for me, guys. My name is Dan, also by aDrive. I want to see those hashtag head smashes all over Twitter. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.